The Safari Zone in most Pokemon games is the same thing. You pay 500 Poké-Dollars, you go in, you catch a Pokemon, and you get out. Wait, why is this Pokemon a different color? It must be sick. Let me run away and let it get better. You could also be like me and just fail to catch every Pokemon for no reason whatsoever. In this video, I want to take a deep dive into the Safari Zone, specifically in the Hoenn region, and talk about all the intricacies and the hidden details you might have not previously known about. Hoenn Safari Zone is located on Route 121, which is just west of Lilycove City and north of Mount Pyre. In Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, the player is limited to 500 steps, and the player is only allowed entry if they also have a Pokéblock case. Sadly, the Safari Zone, much like other things, would be removed in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire.
Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no.
Certain areas of the Safari Zone can only be accessed with a Mach Bike or the Acro Bike, but some areas require one or the other, so you want to run, or I guess bike, back and forth with both to make sure you explore every nook and cranny. In Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, there are breakable rocks that can be used to encounter Pokemon. In Emerald, after the player obtains the National Dex, 2 new areas will open up to the east, featuring many Johto Pokemon that were not found in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire or Fire Red and Leaf Green. This was vital if you wanted to have a completed National Dex back in the day, and it's super cool that they added that in. Getting a National Dex in Emerald also gives you access to a Johto starter from Professor Birch. The Safari Zone is broken into 6 different areas. Areas 1 and 4 are accessible as soon as you gain access to the Safari Zone, with 3 and 4 being locked to the Mach and Acro Bike respectively. Area 5 and 6 can only be accessed after you've entered the Hall of Fame. There are different Pokemon that can be found in each area. Here are some of the Pokemon that you can see in certain areas. Honestly, picking up some Pokemon in the Safari Zone is an underrated and not often used tactic in the Hoenn games. It can lead you to use a lot of Pokemon that most don't during their adventure. It's the only place where most of these Pokemon can be found in the region, and I do encourage you to take a Pokemon from this area during your next playthrough. When I played through Pokemon Emerald this time, I asked my channel members what Pokemon they wanted to be, and I caught them and named my team after them and shared them on my server so everyone could be a part of it. If you do decide to do an Emerald playthrough after this, please join the server and show us your journey. We would love to see it. Did you ever notice these weird machines in the middle of these patches of grass and have no idea what they did? I know I sure didn't. Well, these things are called Pokéblock feeders. If a Pokéblock is placed in a feeder, 80% of wild Pokemon encountered in grass patches and water tiles up to 5 steps away from the feeder will be forced to have a nature such that if an identically flavored Pokéblock were thrown at it, the Pokemon would be easier to capture. Only one Pokéblock may occupy a feeder at a time, and the effect disappears after 100 steps. So basically, this is the ideal way to get a Pokemon of a nature that you specifically want, so it's a good way to get a Pokemon for competitive or even for the dreaded Battle Frontier. So the next time you want to hunt for a Pokemon that you would like to use in Emerald, you can even optimize the Pokemon for your exact needs. Again, it could also lead you to using a super unique team, as if you didn't notice, there are actually 0 Pokemon introduced in Generation 3 that can be found here. And people tend to use Generation 3 Pokemon in, well, Generation 3. If you remember, I said earlier that you don't actually battle Pokemon in the traditional sense while you're in the Safari Zone, but rather you do this kind of Safari Zone game. This game always reminded me of those bomb diffuser simulators for some reason because there are quite a few options which can be good and can be bad. It's literally a combination of a lot of high risk, high reward options, so let me try and break it down for you. There are 4 options on the battle screen: throw a Safari Ball, throw a Pokéblock, go near, and run away. Throwing Pokéblocks makes a Pokemon less likely to run because who doesn't like to eat food? While going near them makes a Pokemon easier to catch but more likely to run. Basically, Pokemon here are introverts, so don't approach them, you pickup gurus. Pokemon in the Safari Zone have 2 unique factors on them. They have a catch factor and an escape factor. Breaking it down as easy as possible, it determines how easy it is for a Pokemon to be caught or how likely they are to escape given a certain circumstance. Even easier said, the lower the escape factor is, the less likely it is to run. Here's a handy chart that shows you what action affects which factor and the rate at which it increases. While the catch factor is unique to each species of Pokemon, with the ones with the harder catch rate being harder to catch, the escape rate for each Pokemon starts at 3, which gives it a 15% chance to run right off the bat. If a Pokemon's escape factor is reduced below 0, it will be adjusted to be a value of 1. If a Pokemon's escape factor is currently 1, Pokeblocks will unaffect it. Looking at the catch factor, here's the catch rate of every Pokemon found in the Safari Zone and the odds of catching you without any multipliers factored in. The Safari Zone becomes a fun game of not only finding rare Pokemon, but also working around their habits to throw, approach, and feed them in a way to maximize your odds of catching one and adding one to your team. Now as an adult, it's much easier to strategically do this kind of thing, but as a kid, I was definitely just pressing random buttons and seeing what would work. How I would personally improve the Safari Zone in Emerald is quite easy actually. Emerald added a lot of quality of life changes to the game that weren't in Ruby and Sapphire, and one of the things they could have easily done is to not make the Safari Zone so optional. You could very easily just never go in there and you would be fine. Maybe making it so you can get an HM in there again. I mean, this game gives you HMs a lot of times where you don't really need to go, so making it where you had to go to the Safari Zone to progress in the game would have been nice. Maybe you meet your rival there and they tell you that it's a great way to get your Pokédex number up. Or how about you go there before going to Lily Cove and there's an NPC inside that gives you an item that you need to take to someone in Lily Cove before the story can progress. Another thing that would have been really cool is having more water specific zones in the Safari Zone that really shows off the Hoenn region. Having a diving portion that connects the right side to the left with some more cool encounters would have been nice. It would have also been nice to have a bit more Johto Pokemon before the National Dex, especially those Pokemon that never got the chance to shine in the actual Johto games. What other changes do you think they could have made? The Safari Zone is something that after the 4th generation will be completely scrapped from the series as a whole. The remix of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire even scrapped the Safari Zone, signaling perhaps a death in the side-catching mechanic of the Pokemon series. I don't know about you guys, but for me the Safari Zone is pretty synonymous with Pokemon. While I almost never actually caught and used anything in the Safari Zone, as by the time I would reach them in the games, I had most of my team already figured out, it was a nice option to have and something that I would have stopped by once or twice in a playthrough just to experience and perhaps add more Pokemon to my Pokédex. It's far from my most missed thing in the Pokemon series. That would easily be the Battle Frontier, but I would be lying if I said I didn't miss it at all.